Good afternoon and welcome to the Oxford Cannabinoid Technology Holdings PLC interim results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged, can be submitted at any time. Please just simply type in your question in the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and if you would give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand over to Karen Lowe, CFO, and Dr. John Lucas, CEO from Oxford Cannabinoid Technologies. Good afternoon.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it, being able to share our story. If we start with the initial slide, so from 2006 to 2020, the number of opioid prescriptions in the United States dropped from about 215 million to 140 million. And this trend tells us a couple things. It tells us that physicians are recognizing the crisis and they're cutting back on the use of opioids. But another fact that it tells you is there's millions of patients now that are in pain, that are being left out. And this is the patient group that we're targeting. These are patients with chronic and severe pain indications, representing an underserved market of over 40 billion. And OCT is focusing on cannabinoids and the receptors because we feel they offer the best opportunity to reduce or replace opioids in many indications. Not all indications, but in many indications. In our pipeline, it's diversified and to balance risk, and it offers multiple opportunities for success. And although we develop phytocannabinoids, we're really focusing our research on this next generation of cannabinoid medicines. And when it comes to developing our products, we don't take chances. So our drug candidates are being served by blue chip organizations. And we have built this incredible network of companies which gives us the same expertise and capabilities as any big pharma. So although we're small, we have access to all of the expertise that we need, and we can compete with anyone. Finally, our interim results shows that we're a company that is financially disciplined and delivering on the milestones that we promised. The pie chart on the right, it shows the total addressable market for cannabinoids in pain, not the entire pain market, but those segments of the pain market that we feel can be addressed by cannabinoids. And this is where we find a 40 billion market that is greatly underserved and growing rapidly. And initially, we're pursuing two of these segments, neuropathic pain and visceral pain. And this makes up our serviceable available market. And our serviceable attainable market refers to those indications that we're actually pursuing at this time. And that's 1.55 billion, and is represented by our first two candidates and first three indications. We haven't added programs 3 and 4 to this, and this will greatly increase that number when those are added as well. We talk about some highlights, what we've done since May. We've made really good progress across all of our programs. And we've also been very disciplined in the way that we use our capital. In July, we kicked off preclinical development of our lead candidate 461201. We contracted with Evotech because they're the only provider that can do both the manufacturing and the biological work, that is the safety, toxicology, and pharmacokinetics. They're the only ones that could do that all under one roof. And particularly in the age of COVID, we felt that offered the best the best company to work with to significantly reduce our risks. And in October, we announced that preclinical development was kicking off for our second program. This program is a combination of phytocannabinoids for pulmonary administration to treat pain in trigeminal neuralgia. And if we back up a couple months, in September, we announced the exclusive license for Canopy Growth's entire pharmaceutical cannabinoid derivative library that included 355 compounds that were synthesized and tested, as well as an extensive patent portfolio that includes 14 patent families. And we believe this is going to de-risk and accelerate our programs 3 and 4. We also think that this library will be a source of further programs, a 5 and a 6 and so forth down the road. In November, we signed an agreement with Dow Rated Drug Discovery. This is the CRO that Canopy Growth, they did all the work for Canopy Growth. They did the design, the synthesis, and the testing of the compounds for Canopy Growth. And this, by contracting with them and all the history they have around this library, it created a seamless transition over to OCT. And we already have 3 ongoing programs with them. We also signed an agreement in November with STEMtech. This is an evolution of our relationship with Oxford University. STEMtech was a spin out by Professor Samuel Kadar, and he's been working with us for a few years now in pain research. He's going to be applying this cutting edge translational pain model across all of our compounds. OCT, if I want to frame the company, and I want to make a distinction here, we are a pharmaceutical company. We're not a medical cannabis company. This is an important distinction. Our target market are patients with chronic and severe pain conditions who are in the care of a physician. Our primary market is the United States, and physicians in the U.S. can only prescribe by law those drug products that are approved by FDA, and this excludes medical cannabis. We felt that therefore that defeats the purpose if we're developing drug products, to treat a patient in a care that's under the care of a physician. And we are developing drug products that will be approved and licensed by FDA and other medicines regulatory agencies like MHRA here in the UK and EMA in Europe. Our licensed drug products are going to have significant advantages over medical cannabis, including the following. So they're going to have a claim to treat a particular indication. They're going to be prescribed by physicians with confidence. They're going to be reimbursed by payers, that's insurance companies, so the patient isn't having to pay out of pocket. They're going to have market exclusivity, which is extremely important when you have such a high upfront cost in development. The exclusivity will be in the form of patents, or for phytocannabinoids, it'll be under orphan designation, so orphan indications. And in the case of our cannabinoid derivatives, our drug products are going to be superior to phytocannabinoids. And then finally, going this route, the licensed medicines route has a much higher return on investment. Our management team, we have over 75 years of combined experience and the skills necessary to successfully deliver on our drug development programs. And like the management team, we have an experienced board with the relevant backgrounds and experience necessary, including the pharmaceutical industry and finance. If I take you through the timeline of OCT, the company was founded in 2017, coincident with an umbrella agreement, collaboration agreement with the University of Oxford. I should note that we're not a spin out of Oxford, and there's no equity stake in the company. It was simply a fee-for-service umbrella agreement that allowed us to work with any lab at the university. And what that allowed us to do was to really jumpstart our research. And then in 2018, we contracted with Oxford Antibiotic Group to develop and synthesize a cannabinoid library of our own. And that same year, we closed our Series A financing with Imperial Brands leading. In 2019, we unlicensed our lead drug candidate 461201. And then last May, we had our IPO where we raised $16.5 million. And since then, we started clinical development, as I mentioned, with 2 of our lead programs, closed the Canopy deal for the other 2 programs, programs 3 and 4, which we'll talk about. And looking forward, we aim to complete 2 phase 1 clinical trials and therefore have 2 phase 2 ready drug candidates by about this time next year. So we're really moving into a transformational stage for OCT. In terms of how we develop our pipeline, so we develop 3 different types of compounds. The first are phytocannabinoids, exactly the same compound that comes from the plant, same structure. And because they're not patent protected, we pursue orphan indications. We pursue phytocannabinoids because they balance our risk. We feel that they're going to have a very good safety profile. And the second type of compound is examples from our library, so the Canopy in our own library. These are chemically modified phytocannabinoids where where we make them superior through medicinal chemistry. And then finally, we have a third type of compound, a completely new chemical entity that targets a cannabinoid receptor. This is a big pharma approach, and it's a cannabinoid mimetic. An example of this is our lead candidate, 461201. Now, we in-license any compound falling into these categories. Example, as I mentioned, is the 461201, then the CANNABINOID library. And in-licensing allows us to develop our pipeline faster because we already have then drug candidates that are further along. We're not starting from scratch. And there's a lot of biotech and pharma companies that suffer from a not invented here syndrome, but not us. We're here to build value. And to do this, we need strong drug candidates. We don't care who invents them as long as they end up in our pipeline. Currently, for our development, we have a virtual model. We have several partners, both academic and commercial, and the choice of partner depends upon the type and the stage of research and development that we're doing. And very importantly, OCT owns all the IP arising from this research. Now, turning to monetizing our programs, our aim is to take our programs to at least phase 2, the completion of phase 2, where we can recognize the greatest value inflection. And our goal, however, is to directly commercialize at least some of our drug products. Now, if you ask me, John, what is the secret sauce of OCT? What has made you, so successful in being able to take these programs forward and to, maintain all of your timelines and to do more than what you promised? And, the first part, we have a fantastic CSO, Valentino, and, he's remarkable at identifying drug candidates and indication and, and designing our drug programs. The other part is our ability to build these incredible teams. And you can see in these programs, and we have multiple companies working for us, each, providing service in a particular area. And through our partners, we have the same expertise and capabilities as a big pharma. And now that we have these relationships established, and that was a lot of heavy lifting over this first 9 months to do this, but now that we have them all in place, we can apply them to any future program. So this will make future programs, much easier to take forward while we're continuing to develop the programs in the pipeline currently. If we talk about our drug development programs that are in the pipeline, we have a differentiated pipeline that will not collapse if one were unfortunately to fail. And this offers the downside protection. They're not so interconnected that if one fails, the other fail. But more importantly is the upside. And if we look at the first program, this is our lead candidate, 461201. This is a cannabinoid mimetic that was originally designed in Pfizer's pain unit in Japan. Pfizer closed down that unit to consolidate their R&D. The scientists wanted the assets because they saw the value and they spun them out. They had more assets than they can handle, and we were able to in-license 461201. And it was a compound we were looking for. It's a highly potent and selective CV2 agonist. What that means in layman's terms is this compound doesn't have psychoactive properties, which is, beneficial in this case. But it does have analgesic properties, so it reduces pain, and importantly, it reduces neuroinflammation. The compound is in preclinical development. It's already demonstrated safety in 3 in vivo pain models. Efficacy, in 3 in vivo pain models, and safety in 2 animal models, rats and dogs. And it's well into preclinical development, and we're developing it as a pill that a patient will take once or twice a day. We aim to begin phase 1 clinical trials in Q1 of 2023. I should note that we had a bit of a hiccup, and there was a slight delay, and that was just, one of the natural things that just happens when, in any preclinical development program. But we worked through that. It had to do with crystallizing and which crystal we wanted to choose and so forth. That was most commercially relevant. That's been selected. We've now moved on from that. So the important bit is that we're still on track. We're still on time. We'll still be phase 2 ready in Q2 of 2023. Our program 2 is a combination of 2 phytocannabinoids, and because we're using phytocannabinoids, we don't expect any safety issues. We're pursuing orphan indications for market exclusivity, And the first orphan indication for this drug candidate is trigeminal neuralgia, which is an excruciating facial pain that comes on very suddenly. And a trigeminal neuralgia patient can have up to 100 attacks a day. Because the pain is so severe and it comes on so suddenly, we need to, the onset time has to be very short. And really the only way to do this practically is through inhalation. And that's why we're using a simple metered dose inhaler. The beauty of this program is that it is really designed for speed. The phytocannabinoids are already manufactured. They have drug master files, so we don't have to spend $1 million pounds on developing manufacturing that compound. We simply buy the compounds. The metered dose inhaler we're using is off the shelf. It's been used widely for years. So there's nothing really to develop except the drug itself into these patients. That means we can get this into people incredibly fast. And in fact, I mean, this program is going from something on paper to first in humans in about a year, which is just unheard of in this business. Normally, when you are developing a drug candidate, you first synthesize it, you have about 2.5 to 3.5 years before you'll ever be able to get that into a patient. So Valentina has been moving mountains to get this in, and I'm couldn't be happier with the progress that we're making. Our program 3, we're going to screen and identify a cannabinoid derivative from our combined OCT and Canopy libraries that are active in a neuroactive pain model. The addition of the Canopy compounds more than quadruples the size of our cannabinoid library, which is one of the reasons why we really want to get this library in, because we believe that this will increase our probability of success. And we aim to be ready for preclinical development with a compound from this program in Q2 of 2023. And then finally, our 4th program, with the addition of the Canopy library, we have changed our approach from what we set forth in the prospectus. The end goal remains exactly the same, but instead of screening a large random library of compounds as the approach where we're going to take like a big pharma approach, we're using a more focused approach with a set of compounds from ours, but particularly the Canopy libraries, because we like what we saw. And our aim is to identify a drug candidate that's going to be targeting the same receptor, it's going to have the same properties that we set forth and that we're looking for when this was set out in the prospectus. It's going to have broad use across multiple therapeutic areas, and not only pain, but in epilepsy, oncology, and immunology. If we go to the Gantt and our timelines, we're still on time. We're still on track. Exactly, what we said. We expect our first drug approvals and commercialization to occur in 2027, and this will soon be followed soon thereafter by subsequent approvals. And a key synergy of our product strategy is that we select drug candidates that can be repurposed across multiple indications. This is demonstrated only for the first, but it's true for the other programs as well. But for 461201, you can see the 3 lines there. And what this allows us to do, if you go into a second indication, you get a lot of upside and downside protection. You get downside protection because if one of the indications fail, you still have other indications you can take forward. And the upside of it is you don't have to repeat the preclinical development in the phase 1. You go right into your efficacy, dose ranging efficacy studies in the phase 2. And this really cuts down the development time and gets you much closer to commercialization. I'm going to turn it now over to Karen to give you a financial overview.
Thanks, John. And thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. I just want to give you a bit of a flavour for the key elements from a financial perspective. I suppose that the headline really is that we've got a 12 million cash balance as at the end of November, and that's forecast now to take us through until March next year. The obvious question, where's the money gone compared to where we were when we listed? What have we spent it on? There's been just over $1 million, just under $1 million rather, on R&D, 2/3 of which was program 1, so the OCT 461201, as John's referred to earlier. You've also obviously got your back office costs, and that's been an area of focus for us recently. Well, since really we've listed, we've gone through all items of expenditure to really look and examine what are we spending our money on, why are we getting best value, is there an alternative way of doing this? So an awful lot of time and effort has been put into reducing those non-R&D costs as far as is practical to get more cash to pump back into the R&D area. So an example of that, we've terminated the lease on the London office, so that's due to terminate next month. That's going to generate over 130k of annual savings, and that's just one example of where we've gone through and really pushed and probed and maximising value for money that we're getting across all areas. We've also looked and are continuing to look at the research and development tax claim system to make sure that we're maximising that facility. We've engaged a specialist firm to help us look at that and make sure we're getting as much from it to obviously put back into the machine. So we really are squeezing as much out of that cash resource as we can do to go directly into the programmes themselves. As I say, about 2/3 of the R&D expenditure has been on programme 1. I've just preempting some of the questions coming in that I can see currently on the screen. Obviously, the first part of the year, as a large time has been spent identifying the right partners to go forward with to set up those contracts. So I imagine the expenditure, obviously knowing that the cash takes us through to March next year, the expenditure will rapidly increase on R&D. We've not got precise numbers I can share with you right now, but as I say, we're squeezing the non-R&D to pump back into that area of spend. One other item to note really was we changed the financial year ends, moved it back a month from May through to April. That was also linked to the cost saving exercise that we're trying to do, just to make the audit process more efficient, rather than take it over the holiday period and have duplication of work, picking things up, putting it down as people go on holiday and return. We just felt bringing it forward and getting everything done much more efficiently around that time scale would all add to the savings that we can pump back into R&D. They really are the highlights from a financial perspective. I'll pass you back now to John to wrap up, and then I can see there's a couple of finance questions I'll come to shortly in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So now I'll wrap up briefly here. So we're a pharmaceutical company. That's what OCT does. And we focus on cannabinoids to treat pain. We aim to help those patients who have been left behind in the opioid crisis. Our pipeline is diversified to balance risk, and it has multiple shots on goal. Our research is focused on creating the next generation of cannabinoid-based medicines. We're financially disciplined. We use investors' money wisely and efficiently, and we have enough capital in place to carry us through until we achieve our milestones as set forth in the prospectus. And we may be small, but we've built a large network that gives us the same capabilities as a big pharma. And most importantly, and I'll leave you with this, we are on track, on time, and on budget. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to take any questions.
That's great, Karen and Dr. John Lucas. Thank you so much for updating investors this afternoon. Can I please ask investors to continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Karen, John, we did receive a few questions from investors ahead of today's meeting, and as you said, there's a couple of questions that have popped up now, and obviously I'm sure more will follow. But perhaps if I could start off with the first pre-submitted question, and in fact there were a couple around the same topic of share price. But what reasons are there for the poor performance of the share price, and can you give any explanations around that?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying that the board, is very disappointed with the share price performance since IPO. The markets, particularly both the cannabis and the biotech sector in particular, they've been really challenging. Both have been down more than 20% in 2021. But we do see things improving, particularly, by the end of the spring, we should see things starting to uplift. However, we continue to operate in a manner where we have, we've hit our milestones. We've done the things that we said we would do. And in terms of our 4 current programs, we're right on time, right on track, right on budget. And we're going to see what we believe the value will be reflected in our share price, particularly when we reach those milestones of completion of the phase 1 clinical trials.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. And obviously there were a couple of other questions that obviously clearly, within market rules and regulations you can't obviously address. So thank you to those investors that took time to submit questions ahead of the event. If I may, could I ask you guys to open up the Q&A tab on your screen? You'll see a few questions appearing, and maybe if I could ask you to read out the questions and give a response where it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah, sure. The first one there was, you say your cash balance will take you through to March 2023. Will you be seeking investment from US investors in your next funding round? And what is the expected timetable for this funding? Yes, as we said, but on a cautious front, cash will take us through to March next year. In terms of where we're looking for investments, absolutely US and UK. In terms of timescale, personally, I definitely don't want to run it too close to the bone. We've not got a set timescale I can share with you right now, but as I say, we wouldn't want to take it too close to March next year. It's about looking at the market and the conditions and where we are at the time. Okay. I think the next one's another finance one for me, John.
Take it.
So next question is, oops, sorry. Yeah, thanks for the update. Do you see further scope on the cost saving front, and what do you expect to spend on research and development in the upcoming year? Absolutely more scope on the cost saving. I see it as a personal challenge. To be honest, I don't like waste. I don't like inefficiency. So I will continuously push for value for money. That's just me and who I am. We've got really rigorous processes. Exactly how much more we can save, I honestly don't know. I know what I'd like to keep saving. I've not got precise figures, but I can absolutely guarantee we will keep pushing to get absolute best value and as many cost efficiencies as we can do. As I said before, in terms of the proportion of money spent on R&D, I would expect that now that we've got past that stage of selecting the key partners, getting the key contracts in place, that will escalate. Again, I'm not in a position to be able to share precise figures with you, but the ratio will definitely, you would see a change between now and where we are at the year end is what I would expect.
And then I'll take the next one. Karen, Simon says, given the quality of the partners, what do you see as the greatest risk to the business relationship moving forward? Well, and because we have so many partners, right now we are stretched pretty thin, and that, that creates a risk in just terms of manpower. However, for the next round, we're already thinking about the kind of headcount that we're going to need to make sure that we have all the right people in place. Because, as you expand into, a number of these relationships, they still all have to be managed by people. And right now we're a very small team.
That's great. Karen, John, I think you've taken all the questions that have come in from investors throughout today's meeting. If any more do make themselves known to us, we'll obviously make them available to you after today's meeting. I know investor feedback is going to be important to you guys, and I'll shortly redirect investors to provide you with their thoughts and expectations. But perhaps before doing so, if I may, John, just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, and then I'll redirect investors.
What I'd like investors to think about is the next 12 months. The next 12 months for OCT is going to be transformative as we move from a preclinical stage company to a clinical stage pharmaceutical company. We couldn't be more excited about that, and we want all the investors to come along on the ride with us. It's going to be exciting.
That's great. Karen, John, thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. It's only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Oxford Cannabinoid Technology Holdings, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That concludes today's session. Good afternoon.